I don't find it very interesting to hypothesize about insanely idealistic societies.
Name, last username, tier 1, cis white male.
A little bit more than I asked for, but okay. Question?
Cool. Destiny, you said, I've heard you say a bunch of times that you used to be libertarian when you were younger, and now you're not. And I'm just sort of curious, like, what exactly changed your mind on that?
I think just getting a little bit older and seeing how like society doesn't play out as we'd like it to, like an ideal utopia, and that you have to account for that with policies is probably what kind of moved me away from that, I think.
So you don't think that a society without a state could accomplish the kind of things that you want to see in a society?
I don't think I can accomplish much of anything.
Or a minimal state.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, you've kind of demolished several utopian political philosophies in your career.
Demolish is pretty generous, but yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think you probably crushed the dreams of some amateur political philosophers who listen to you. So, I mean, do you have like any sort of long-term, ambitious vision of how politics or economics could be changed? Like something, not just like something for the next election, but something
not
generations.
Really, I don't think of it that way. I just like my arguments. Honestly, I'm pretty pessimistic when it comes to my outlook of how politics will go in the U.S.
Do you think things will just get worse?
Yeah, until before they get better, yeah.
I mean, if you had some kind of power to change that, political power, I guess, what would you do?
Ban like 80% of the people from voting in this country, probably. Fuck democracy. What?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also pretty critical of democracy, but I mean, those 80% are not going to like that.
Nope, they sure aren't. It would never work. I think China's got the right idea. Fuck the people, be authoritarian, get shit done.
So, benevolent dictatorship.
Yeah, well, I mean, every dictator considers themselves benevolent in the beginning, but then things get fucked. But hey, what are you going to do? On a more serious note, like, I think that the problems today in society are too complicated for, like, normal citizens to just have an informed opinion about. So, like, it seems like democracy is, like, kind of failing in terms of, like, how to deal with those issues. So, yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is a fairly libertarian argument.
Well, in a libertarian world, we would just collide into oblivion much sooner. I mean, you have to have some sort of regulatory, or I don't know. I don't want to get into a whole libertarian debate, but like, yeah, I think you need some sort of like central like regulatory body and shit, and that these types of agreements can't be negotiated by individuals. Like,
okay, so you do want the government to have lots of power, but you don't want it to be controlled democratically.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I don't know if I necessarily want it. What I would really want is for people in general to be more informed, or to at least to be aware of their psychological shortcomings, I guess. I think it's really important, but...
Do you think that's enough, though? Because, I mean, the amount of work that someone would have to do to become really informed on even a single issue.
It's a lot, yeah, but that's why I said, like, or at least be aware of, like, your shortcomings, I think would be, like, really cool for people to know, like, hey, like, you know, this is something I might not know a lot about. Maybe I should shut the fuck up about it, or at least, like, figuring out, like, who's, like, decent to look at or watch rather than, yeah.
But even if you shut up about something, you still got to vote for someone.
Yeah, but, like, if we could cut down, like, on the fake news bullshit and on, like, all the fake reporting and the fake stats so that people had, like, a decent idea of, like, what they were voting over, or like what's going on, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what the solution is. Like,
I mean, do you think you might want to consider, like this is very much what libertarians core to the libertarian philosophy is this critique of democracy.
But I just don't care because it's so unrealistic. I just don't like to think like when I'm doing unrealistic things. I want to build like prisons and Prison Architect or factories and Factorio or play League of Legends. Like sitting like I just okay. Let me try to say this in a non-condescending way, because every time I say this, it sounds really bad, but I don't mean it to be really bad. Personally, I don't find it very interesting to hypothesize about insanely idealistic societies. That's not something that I enjoy. If there's like a 0% chance that any of this is like ever going to actually come to fruition, it's just not something that I enjoy very much. I just don't like it. That's why I don't like thinking about socialist shit. Like the chances of like us moving towards a libertarian or anarchist or communist or socialist society are like approaching, like asymptotically approach zero. Like it's so unlikely that it's just, I would much rather, I don't even like reading about like impeachment stuff because I don't think it's very relevant past like a year. Like I'd much rather do like policy debate or understanding or researching policies because I think that's relevant for much longer periods of time. That's what I like talking about. Things that I feel like are relevant to issues today that I can like talk about, that I can see change in front of me. Like that's fun for me. I don't like talking about utopian societies. It's just not as much fun for me. Not to say that's bad or that nobody should enjoy that. It's just not enjoyable for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that would make sense in response to socialism, but for libertarianism, I mean, that's, first of all, I wouldn't call that a utopian thing. And it's something that can be, approached very incrementally, like even small changes.
Sure. What incremental approaches would we make to libertarianism then? We can talk about those because that's policy discussion then. And that I'd be very interested in that. Give me like one, if you could sell like one or two big libertarian, like incremental policies, what would it be?
Well, I mean, anything that shrinks the role and responsibility of government. And as far as, which areas I'd like to see shrunk, I think education would be a really helpful one.
So reducing
most important.
Our education right now would be the first step you'd take towards building a utopian society.
Removing the government's responsibility for education.
And when we look around the world and we see the places that educate their citizens the most, it seems like they have a lot of government involved. What would we expect our education to look like when we move the federal government's involvement of education?
It would be private, provided by free markets.
So what would happen for people that can't afford education?
They wouldn't get an education. Same thing that happens for people who can't afford food or a home. They wouldn't have it.
So large sections of our population. So we'd have bigger class divides. The poor would get dumber. The rich would get more intelligent. We'd also get greater race divides. Black people, Hispanics, generally poor, are going to become less educated. Like, how does this not further divides in our society and lead to worse outcomes?
Well, I mean, there are lots of essential things that the government doesn't provide, like food and shelter.
Because markets provide those adequately. I don't know if it can provide education adequately.
Why couldn't they?
Because education seems like it works better as a public good, because I don't want there to be like a... It just doesn't seem like having private incentives set up for schools like works well. That's a little bit of a cop-out. So Bush tried a program called No Child Left Behind, where we tried to incentivize test scores, where we tied funding, I think, to the test scores that students got on their standardized testing, and it seemed to be a massive disaster. And then when I look at other countries that have tried private-esque systems, so for instance, when Sweden attempted to do a voucher system, it seemed to work like catastrophically. It didn't work at all. And then when I look at the most successful countries for education, like South Korea or Finland, they have very high levels of federal involvement, of their federal bodies involved in educating their citizens. So all the empirical data seems to point to the idea that private markets just don't do well when it comes to educating its population.
I mean, I'm not sure what No Child Left Behind has to do with privatizing education. That was just the government creating standards that applied across all.
Well, I'm just saying, like, it doesn't
very much a government.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like you can incentivize private markets to do education well. I don't know if there's a lot of profit there. I don't know if
What do you mean by incentivize? I mean, the incentive would be that people want to go to school and would pay for it.
Yeah, but like, what do you do? So like, what do you, for the people that can't afford school or that have very low levels of income, it seems like you're furthering a divide there. So like, for instance, when we look at education philosophically, I think we would like education to be like a sort of great equalizer. If you go to school and you try really hard, you should be able to get like the same outcome as anybody else. But when we tie education to the class you're in, like you already get huge advantages being born into a wealthy class. Well, now you are born into a wealthy class and you're guaranteed to get a better education. Although that kind of happens a little bit today, even because of the way we fund schools, but the private market would make it like even more divided. Yeah.
I mean, what I see today is that people are just getting a very bad education and don't have a whole lot of choice unless they're very, very rich. So
yeah, but it's not like poor people would get more choice with a private market, right? You're still going to be locked to the school basically that's closest to you. It's not like you can drive your kid an hour away to like go to a better school or something.
There could be several schools close to you though, and this is assuming that school is going to have the same structure when you have private innovation happening. But
I mean, there's room.
I mean, in any case,
go ahead.
One of the areas that we'll likely see innovation in is making education cheaper.
I mean, maybe
nearly a year, ye.
It's possible.
Because right now,
but like
people who don't have money get public education, and it's only rich people who go to private schools. But if poor people will also needed to get their education privately, then there would be a whole new market for low-cost education.
It's possible, or it's just the barrier to entry is too high that people won't even care and nothing will happen. I mean, like, I don't know. I've seen like private education charter schools, like voucher systems seem to fail or not work well, like all over the world. And federally provided education seems to be some of the best education in the world. So I don't know, like the idea of like just getting rid of our whole education system and banking on the idea that the private market is going to develop some new innovation is really scary to me. Doesn't seem worth the risk.
I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that what we have now is pretty bad, and it seems to be getting worse because the essentially demands of education are changing as the job market changes and technology changes society, but education isn't really adapting to that.
Sure, but it is in other countries, so like why reinvent the wheel? Why not just copy what other people do if it works?
I'm not sure if it is in other countries. I mean, certainly other countries are doing a little bit better than the United States, but there isn't a massive difference. I mean, we still have this problem that we're
Wait, there isn't a massive difference in educational attainment between like children in like Finland and South Korea versus the United States?
Not really. I mean, the schools are better, but they're pretty much doing the same thing. They're keeping kids in classrooms, sitting and being lectured by a teacher till they're 18 or something, and then sometimes they have to spend several more years at university, and they never have, and they basically have no experience in the real world.
Well, of course, because you're in school. You need to get a job to get like real world experience.
Right, but I think the world we live in now really requires that people get out into the world when they're younger and have some more hands-on experience.
Well, this is like the point of like internships and stuff. Is why we try to push people towards stuff like this. No.
Yeah, sure, but are there a lot of opportunities for internships in high school?
In high school, no, but in college, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, that's definitely the kind of thing I'd like to see more of, like internships, apprenticeships. But the education system doesn't seem to be designed to take advantage of that very much.
I mean, internships exist in colleges. Like, I don't know what else.
In colleges, yeah.
Sure.
In particular programs, and they don't. And that's also for programs where the students already decided what kind of career they want, and then they go do the internship. It might be
Armando
nice
enjoys
to
man Pepala bullet train
kids who are like high
Derpstani.
school age doing internships when they don't know what they want to do, so they can find out.
Well, it's really cool. We'll look into that last username. Thank you.
If you grow up in a shitty area and the only people around you are like fucking drug dealers or some shit, and you don't know anybody that's like gone to school, been successful, you don't have that role model in your life,